My name is Paul Barron. This is TechPath. Let's jump into it today. So here's the one question, DeFi and kind of the evolution of where Ethereum, Cardano is moving. Polkadot, of course, gets thrown into this bunch in terms of the DeFi, kind of the DeFi high flyers. And I want to kind of explain to you a little bit about what Polkadot is, because I think this is one of the misnomers that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. So we put these market movers together. The way they work is we do a whole bunch of research, we pull in some sentiment data, all that kind of cool stuff, and then we come back, we mash it together, and we put together a package for you, hopefully giving you guys a little bit more understanding of where something is going, whether it's a trend, a little bit more education around the technology itself. But first and foremost, this is not investment advice. It's an educational research package that is basically based on our own findings and options. Options meaning things that we use to research these. We're not financial advisors and highly recommend you do your own research and due diligence always. Whether you're investing privately or publicly in any kind of publicly traded stuff, you should always do your own investment. I talk about this a lot on the show, is that sometimes with what we're seeing in terms of both FUD and also just news in general, it's best to really get multiple sources out there around where a particular asset or a particular asset class is moving. So you want to make sure and do that. So we've done this thing called TechPath Crypto, and it's really kind of I won't say it's an exploration into each individual cryptocurrency or technology or blockchain, but it is kind of putting our content in a bucket over here that really drills down into the crypto side. So let's jump to Polkadot. Polkadot is basically an innovative blockchain protocol that connects different blockchains into one unified network. It was developed kind of as a part of the internet that gives back control in the hands of individuals over internet monopolies. The network builds on the first Bitcoin and second-gen Ethereum blockchain networks while offering multiple advantages focused on an intersection and backwards compatible approach. This is one of the biggest things around Polkadot that I think a lot of people miss, is that they actually, Gavin was actually, had the forethought to go backwards compatible to Ethereum. And I think that's going to end up paying off very well for Polkadot and kind of where they're moving with it. If you look at the interoperability of Polkadot, one thing that it does, basically it's a blockchain network nowadays, don't interact with each other. So there's going to be a need to kind of connect the dots, so to speak. So they intend to change this narrative by enabling blockchains to share information and data basically between one another. So this is going to be, think of this as a highway system. And I've had several people that kind of use this metaphor. And, Polkadot, Ethereum, Cardano, they are I-95, which is our biggest interstate here in South Florida. You can get to the place you want to go, but you're going on one particular way. Polkadot is the kind of the layer of exits that connect all the different places that you might want to go, that's essentially riding on top of those platforms or connecting those platforms with so many other places. That's the difference between where Polkadot can really play out. And there's quite a bit of news that kind of directs in this way. I want to jump over to the Motley Fool piece. This was a piece that basically said, hey, why Polkadot could be a great buy for crypto investors. One of the things that they kind of outlined, let me jump over to that one. And you kind of see here quickly, one of the things I wanted to draw attention to was this Polkadot Advantage. Let's go over to my screen right there. Let me zoom in on this one. So it's basically over the last few, Bitcoin and Ethereum networks have processed roughly 3 transactions per second and 15 transactions per second, respectively. Just to give you a context here, Visa does about 4,800 in that same period of time per second last quarter. In other words, Bitcoin and Ethereum have a scalability problem. And this has been a problem that has been around for quite some time. It's one reason why ETH2 is being developed and what we are seeing potential. But by using parachains, which is what these are, what Polkadot essentially has developed, Polkadot can process more transactions in parallel, boosting throughput. At least that's the theory. And of course, this is the first parachains are slated to launch later this year. When they do, Gavin Wood, Sir Dr. Gavin Wood is going to be the one that basically will move this into 1 million transactions per second. So this essentially would trump the traditional financial systems in terms of the speed in which transactions could occur. So there's a big opportunity here for Polkadot and where they're going with this. And when you look at the scale in which these parachains could potentially operate, this could really bring a whole ton of different types of technologies, different types of industries, other than just financial, into the layer of blockchain and be able to drive into some of these core protocols such as Ethereum and Cardano. So that's one of the reasons. The other thing that I find interesting was a piece done by CoinDesk, and this is Master Ventures launches a $30 million Polkadot fund. Now granted, 30 million, you know, hey, that's a drop in the bucket when you look at this. But the point is that you have funds now that are moving into venture, organized venture around these projects. And when you see that kind of movement start to occur, typically what happens is it draws other VCs and or other fund managers that want to get involved in this. And I want to kind of jump to this last item that I thought was kind of interesting about Polkadot. And I want to go over to our trading view point on this. And this is kind of where I'm going with this, is because the big thing is, will and can Polkadot hold on with and in the shadow of Ethereum and Cardano? Because Cardano is really kind of the high flyer here. It's been one of those coins that just is doing fantastic, and I'll show you some data on this. I've got another video coming out on ICP that kind of talks about that and compares some of the DeFi projects and how they might line up, even though ICP is a little different animal. But the point being is there's some interesting things happening. When you look at where Polkadot is right now, I want to kind of focus in on their sentiment. So let me kind of zoom in a little bit right here. The sentiment data, as you look back on this date, which was around May 21st when the big drop occurred, that big correction, sentiment had been falling fairly consistent to about 45.88. Then we saw that little bounce off the floor and a little bit of a rise over this past week here for Polkadot. And sentiment has, of course, came up and met with the 51.46. Now, granted, remember, sentiment right now is still fairly low on Polkadot in comparison, but the amplification rate, there are two zones where I think this potentially could happen. One is going to be right here in the July, around July 21st in this zone where we'll start to see Polkadot, I believe, based on the amplification data that we're getting from the current sentiment stack, which is how people are amplifying, the good word about it, also the projects in itself, and basically amplifying the word. Remember, just like a stock, cryptocurrency is kind of the same thing. It works off of word of mouth, that kind of, sell or buy the rumor, sell the news. That it works exactly the same way in social and how it's been implemented across these programs. The key here is going to be whether or not Polkadot can keep on front of the news with project development. I think that's the biggest thing that many of these developers have to really become kind of champions of and become masters of, utilizing the rollout and the PR engine that is the internet and it is Twitter primarily to help move these things along. But if you go back to this amplification, we look at this as rising up to around a 71.09. This is a pretty heavy amplification number, and it's rising right here over the next 2 weeks. We see that potentially rolling out of what's happened over these trade volumes. And if you look at this trade volume group right down here, lots of trade volume. This gives us amplification data that we can start to chart out, which puts us at an all-time high, we think, where Polkadot was at their all-time high back in, right at the May 21st number, and they were right at $49.95. We think we're going to hit that $50 mark for Polkadot in August. So that's the prediction. That's kind of the look that I'm looking at in terms of where Polkadot can go. They definitely are on the right track. And when you look at this cryptocurrency, it just has a lot of very functional aspects to it. Obviously, we have to see things happening. The other thing that could kind of steal some thunder from Polkadot is things that could happen in Cardano, and especially as ETH2. You've got to remember, Alonzo is rolling out with Cardano this in July. And the likelihood of Cardano making some fairly big moves into being able to sustain kind of this layer two functionality and some of the tech that it's going to plug into could really play into whether or not Polkadot can sustain out through the summer. Now, I believe that there's a huge volume, as you can see, and you saw there on TradingView, there's a lot of volume happening in Polkadot, and the fact that we see this in a time in which volumes have been consistently low. That's the other aspect that I would kind of keep track on. That's why the amplification number has been able to hold up so well with Polkadot. So, in short, Polkadot, definitely a needed product or a needed technology in the blockchain. I think it may be actually a little early for this particular currency, cryptocurrency. I think this project has legs later this year when I think institutional is going to start structuring a little bit more. Polkadot may be a horse that the institutions like because of its ability to start to interconnect all the dots of the blockchain and be able to basically bring companies into the blockchain that maybe never had even thought about being there. So, lots of opportunity here on the upside. The cool thing is that they've got a great and amazing group of developers, and I think as you look at their team in general, the potential for what they have to do is pretty amazing, and I think it's just a matter of time before these guys get, they become kind of that Cardano spin of DeFi, and I think that's the thing. Hosk has done a great job over with Cardano in being able to set up particular project achievements, being in the right place at the right time. I think Polkadot's time in the sun is coming. Definitely one of the few that's been performing over the past few weeks. So make sure and stay tuned right here. If you're watching over on YouTube right now, make sure and subscribe. It's the #1 way you can help the channel. We are trying to move our numbers up, and it's guys like you and people like you that really helps us get to the next level. Make sure if you have an idea for a show that you send that to us. The best way is email producer@reverendnetworks.com. You can always hit me up on Twitter @PaulBaron. I leave my DMs open. I hope I don't get spammed too much, and I try to get back to all of you guys when you do DM me, so thank you so much for your kind words. And we love to hear from you guys, but if you do have an idea, send that to us there. As always, man, we'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.